Bam! What's up, guys? We're here. We're live. We made it. Had some technical fun to get through to get here, but here we are. And it's week one. We're here to preview a real life NFL football game that matters. We talked last time we were 56 hours away. Now we're like 7 hours or so away from real life NFL football that matters. John, I know you've been under the weather a little bit. I've been under the weather a little bit, but we have made it and we are here. How's it going?
It's going well. First NFL game on the docket. Going to be exciting. This now introduces the part of my life where my evenings are gone. So this is going to be fun.
There you go.
But thankfully, it's the beginning of the season isn't bad because we got games like Chiefs, Ravens. But once we start getting to the Thursday games where it's like Jags versus Panthers, I'm just like, bro, just end it now.
Yeah.
End it now.
Al Michaels feels the same way. You can
Yeah.
All right. So
I'm not getting the check he's getting though.
Yeah, that's
if I
for
was
sure.
getting that check, I'd be feeling much, much better.
Yeah, or you could just live with it for a little bit if you were dealing with that. But before we get into the Cowboy stuff, what's your pick tonight? Chiefs, Ravens, huge game. There's some guys not playing. The Ravens have changed a lot from last year. What's your take on the game tonight?
Man, it's one of those things. I ain't betting against Patrick Mahomes, even if it's the regular season. I think if the Ravens are going to beat him, this is the best opportunity to do so. But, I just don't bet against Mahomes. Any situation, you're going to end up wrong more times than you're right. And I do like the Ravens. I think they're a really fun team. I really obviously, schematics wise, like offense and defenses. They're one of the funnest teams to study in the NFL, which is why, all of the big film nerds, all of our buddies, the film nerds, you see tons of Ravens content throughout the year. It's because they're so intriguing and so unique compared to most NFL offenses and defenses. So it's going to be exciting either way. I think the best thing is that regardless of who wins, I think we're going to get a great game.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think you're right in the thought about Patrick Mahomes too. Is it feels like it sounds so silly because they won the Super Bowl. But it feels like he's very unsatisfied, and the team is very unsatisfied with the way they played in 2023.
I mean, for the regular season last year, they were barely they were a wild card team. They weren't impressive at all. And then in the playoffs, Patrick Mahomes was like, "Let me pull out this Superman cape, sir, and we're gonna go to the Super Bowl and win." And their defense was phenomenal. Spagnuolo, everybody knows, is one of the top 2 or 3 best defensive coordinators in the league, and has been since he stepped into the league, it seems like.
Yeah, so you're looking at a top 5 defense on a team where Patrick Mahomes is your quarterback. In the great quarterbacks don't need help conversation, that the Chiefs continue to spit in the face of that as they invest in offensive linemen, wide receivers, and defensive players very high every year. I tend to agree with you. I think the Chiefs are ready for one of those seasons, like one of those 14-3, 15-2, just roll through everybody kind of seasons. And it's who knows what happens when they get in the playoffs, but it feels like one of those times where there's just one team in the league that everybody looks at and kind of says, yeah, they are the class above everyone else, and it's just a matter of can those teams can you catch them on a bad day to be able to beat them in the playoffs?
What do you think is the odds of a three-peat?
Man, it's so hard because everything has to go right for a 2-month stretch that, a repeat is so hard, much less a three-peat. But, it's one of those things where it's like you've got Steve Spagnuolo and you've got Andy Reid. So you're schematically you're going to be right on top of things. You're going to be put in position to succeed. And then you've got Pat Mahomes, and that guy just does not have bad games. Even last year, whenever he looked his most human in that offense, he still was crazy efficient and really good. And
How many games did we see at the end where he makes a gorgeous throw to put the Chiefs in position to, would have put them in position for a field goal or a winning touchdown, and it clanked off of, Valdez Scantling's hands, or it clanked off Justin Watson's hands? Like, I remember that happened repeatedly last year, which was great, where Patrick Mahomes was putting on a Superman cape and no one was there to be his Robin. He was just kind of
or offensive offsides, or crazy stuff like that. So
Kadarius Toney,
yeah. And you think about they let go of Kadarius Toney. They bring in Hollywood Brown. They draft Xavier Worthy, and then just this week they bring back Juju Smith-Schuster back from who was like a really key part of the team that won the Super Bowl in 2022. So I think the Chiefs are headed for one of those seasons in the AFC where it just looks and sounds and feels different when those guys play. One more piece of conversation before we get to the preview of the Cleveland Browns is this question comment from Trevor. We talked about it a little bit on Tuesday. Is a Dak deal coming? John, what's your instinct? Did they get this done? What's your instinct before I go?
I mean, I hope so. I want so. I can't. It's hard for me to parse out the feelings of like I really want them to. I really hope. Like everything in my being is like I hope it gets done. I want it to get done, and that's like kind of like convincing me that it will get done. But I'm not sure if in actuality it will get done. But like I said, I'm hoping hope that it does happen. But every hour that goes by and it's not done, I get a little less optimistic.
Yeah, it kind of feels like, and this is a trend for the Joneses, is it kind of feels like right as they get ready to do one of these deals, they start to squeal a lot like a pig whenever you're like carrying them on. I'm from the country a little bit. So when you carry a pig, like they start to squeal and squirm and all this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And it sort of starts to feel like, Alec, I think is right, is that it feels like there's too much noise. It feels like there's too much coming out about how they're not that close and how, this might be the problem and that might be the problem. And they don't feel like they have to get it done. And Jerry's talking to Stephen A. Smith for an hour and 10 minutes. I don't know about you. I was going to say, I did not take the time to listen to those two yap back and forth for an hour and 15 minutes. But
I listened to about 35 minutes while I was on the elliptical yesterday, and it was just as nonsense filled as you would hope. The funniest thing to me was like, the whole consternation about the Cowboys not signing anybody. And then, of course, we finally get a one-on-one sit down with Jerry Jones, someone who can like actually ask him the questions and like hold his feet to the fire, so to speak. And Stephen A. Smith looks at the camera, stares at him, and he goes, "You didn't really sign anyone, and I really think that you should have gotten Derrick Henry. I think that is the big mess up you guys had not signing people was Derrick Henry." I was like, guys, that's the one. This is the one we're going to hold his feet. Like, we didn't improve so many positions through free agency, but because running back, we didn't grab the 32-year-old who runs it 600 times a year. That's the one that we want to make sure. And I was like, geez, here we go.
We got 4 or 5 rookie starters going into week one, and we're asking about the running back spot where we have, the best running back room in the NFL in 2018, which Derrick Henry would have been a part of that great running back room in 2018 too, so it would fit. But anyway, as we get to the Browns, this is kind of interesting because it's an uncommon opponent now for the Cowboys, but back in the day was like there was a big Cowboys-Browns rivalry that I'm a little bit too young to remember, and I'm sure you are too. But it's there's a lot of history between these two teams for sure. Before we get too much into the games and the players to watch and all that kind of stuff, one of the things that plays into these games a lot is injuries, right? So the Cowboys and the injury reports look drastically different between the two teams, and it'll be kind of funny as we look at it. For the Cowboys, is there anything on this report that brings you a lot of concern? Most of the guys, you guys can read, so I'm not gonna take the time to go through each person here. But most of the guys are full participants, even though, some of these things you read and you're like, oh man, an Achilles injury keeping, causing you to be on the injury report doesn't sound great for an interior defensive lineman you're counting on a lot. But any of these have you significantly worried going into week one, or do you feel like this team is pretty healthy and ready to go outside of, we know about Deron Bland, we know about Sam Williams being out, but
Yeah, I think it's about as good as you can expect. You hope, obviously, I hope that John Stevens Jr.'s he can get right by week time, by game time, so that we can see if he adds that new little wrinkle to the Cowboys offense. But even if he missed, that's not particularly a big giant deal, I don't think, especially for 1 week. But yeah, I think it's just mostly important that they're not missing, big key. The biggest problem would be like if Tyler Guyton was hurt, or Terrence Steele was hurt, getting one of these players hurt and not playing, who's going to have a really tough matchup throughout the week and is going to force you to put in a backup. That would be tough. Like if we had to think about, putting Matt Waletzko out at left tackle, that would be terrifying. But since they don't have that, I'm really excited. And I think it's going to be a good game. I think it's two teams I think both teams are relatively healthy. So I think you're going to see them both at full strength and get kind of a indication of where each team stands.
yeah, I think in general you're right. Pretty much, if guys are practicing on Wednesday, they're almost certainly going to play on Sunday. Looks like John may be losing John a little bit here.
That's you.
But my general belief is that if guys practice on Wednesday and Thursday, they're almost certainly going to play. And if we see John Stevens go from not practicing on Wednesday to limited on Thursday to maybe full participant on Friday or something like that, and he's ready to go, great. If not, you can live without your third tight end for opening week, even if you do feel like he's got the chance to be a pretty cool weapon for you. On the other side for the Browns, I mentioned how much different it looks. For the Cowboys, who had nobody listed as limited, and then you come over here to the Browns, and there's some relatively significant names on this list. We heard Jedrick Wills, the left tackle, say he's not playing against the Cowboys, or at least not starting. I would assume that would mean not playing, because most of the time with guys like that, if you're healthy enough to play, you're healthy enough to start. So both Jedrick Wills and Jack Conklin are on the injury report this week, as are, both Jordan Hicks and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, pretty important pieces of the second level of that defense. And Maurice Hurst and Dalvin Tomlinson, pretty significant parts of the interior of that defensive line. And then Jerry Jeudy's a full participant with a knee thing, but a guy that they traded, not nothing for this offseason to acquire. Quite a lot of guys on this list, even if I think we expect most of them to play. It's interesting to see this many guys listed as limited. And that this could also be, there's lots of factors that go into this. If you're going to miss, if you miss even one snap, I believe that you would normally have taken, you are supposed to be listed as limited on the injury report, or you're supposed to show up on the injury report. So it's a very, it's hard to gain too much from these injury reports, but it is important to look at. And it's Thursday at noon. We don't have the Thursday injury report for these guys yet. So there's a chance that most of these guys who are limited right now would wind up being full participants on Thursday and Friday and wind up playing. Other than Wills, who we know is not playing, who are you crossing your fingers that, like, hey, even if, we never want anybody to get hurt, but these guys are hurt already. So if there's somebody that you look at and say, man, this could have a really massive impact on this game, if this person is limited by injury at all, that would be who?
I think Jack Conklin's a good shout for that, but I really think for the defensive side of the ball, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, if he's limited during the game, would be a big deal, because he's such an important factor to the second level of their defense. He plays so fast. His ability to not only fill his running lanes, but also get out in coverage and make plays there is something that has helped the Cleveland defense significantly. And if he's not in, I think it would allow the Cowboys to be much more successful to the short to intermediate, and especially in the middle of the field. Guys like, I think, Jake Ferguson would be able to have a much easier time being productive with JOK out. So I would have to go his way.
Yeah, he's a super important part of the middle of their defense. Jordan Hicks is interesting to me because he's a guy that they brought in and signed this year in order to help with their run defense a little bit. To be kind of because JOK is that fly around all over the place, kind of smaller, a little bit similar to DeMarvion Overshawn in a lot of ways in terms of was he a safety? Was he a linebacker in college? What position is he going to play in the pros? He kind of settles into linebacker with the Browns and is really good, but is more of kind of run around, play coverage, make plays kind of linebacker more than a come downhill and make plays against the run kind of linebacker. And so when you combine Dalvin Tomlinson, Maurice Hurst, and Jordan Hicks, all three being injured, if there's some limitations there, with the Cowboys having the interior offensive line that we think that they're going to have in terms of those three up front with Smith, Beebe, and Martin, there's a chance for the Cowboys to take advantage in the running game there, which is just one more way for the Cowboys to attack a really, really good Browns defense.
I agree.
So, we're going to get into some matchups. The big story, will be Deshaun Watson and how does he play? Hasn't played well in a couple of years. Can he play up to a level? Joe Flacco came in for this team last year and played, acceptable NFL quarterback level, and it was like all the rage in the NFL, and he won Comeback Player of the Year for it. If Deshaun Watson can play better than Joe Flacco, this is a really dangerous team. But the problem is he hasn't done that for like 2 years. So what does the Cowboys defense need to do against Deshaun Watson? This is your world right here. What does the Cowboys defense need to do to be able to put them in position to succeed against Deshaun Watson, Amari Cooper, all these guys that the Browns, David Njoku, all these guys that the Browns have on offense, knowing there's a chance they could be without both starting offensive tackles?
This is the thing that's exciting because I think exactly the type of scheme that Zimmer is implementing is the type of scheme that you would want to employ against a guy like Deshaun Watson. Disguising looks, changing the looks pre and post snap a lot, making him think, making him question his decisions, creating false blitzes off one edge, bringing pressure off the other, doing those type of things where he's going to have to process post snap is going to allow the Cowboys, I think, to be put in a position to be successful on a consistent basis. I think also, obviously, with any quarterback, you want to put pressure on them. So it's going to be it's going to be a lot of pressure on guys like DeMarcus Lawrence, Micah Parsons, and Osa Odigizua to get home and to apply that pressure on Deshaun Watson and take advantage of the one-on-one opportunities they get. And it's going to be very important for the Cowboys blitzers to take advantage of their opportunities because we know Zimmer's going to bring the blitzes from time to time. And it's really paramount that the Cowboys got to generate that pressure and put Deshaun Watson in uncomfortable situations because even though we know that he hasn't played up to par, he's actually been, one of the worst, below bad quarterbacks in the NFL since he came back from his suspension. But they do have a lot of talent on that offense, especially at the receiver position. It's going to be, especially given that the Cowboys are going to be without Deron Bland, the Browns are going to have a beneficial matchup in their favor every time they put three receivers on the field. When you have guys like Elijah Moore, Amari Cooper, and Jerry Jeudy, going against Jordan Lewis, Trevon Diggs, and Kalen Carson. Whoever Kalen Carson is going against on those three is going to be something that's going to make you hold your breath a little bit, especially if he's opposite someone like Amari Cooper. We've seen what Amari Cooper does against, rookie young cornerbacks. That's where he really exploits, and that's really where his ability to run routes really enables him to create a giant separation and make easy throws for his quarterback. So I think it's going to be really important that the Cowboys are using those disguises, not allowing Deshaun Watson to really pinpoint where he has one-on-one matchups, where he can really attack and create voids in the Cowboys defense. And as long as they can do that, I think they're going to play a lot of quarters. I think we're going to see a ton of quarters in this matchup, especially because, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see them play some of those quarters coverage variants where the deep safety, instead of helping the number two, he's helping the outside receiver. I forget if Saban calls it like Buster or one of the other cover seven variations that he has in his tool belt. But I wouldn't be surprised if you saw Carson in particular get a lot of safety help his way, especially when he's going to be on the outside. And, normal situations where Amari Cooper's on the outside, I think you're going to see Zimmer have better answers for those situations than maybe Dan Quinn would have had in the past. So that's going to be intriguing. And then I think the number one thing that the Cowboys are going to have to defend, and there was a big issue that they had last year, is off play action. The second level defenders have to be extremely disciplined. They can't be pulled up to the line of scrimmage consistently, so that creates those secondary voids where a guy like David Njoku can have a big day. So I think just disguise and pressure are going to be the two main things that you want to see from the Cowboys against Deshaun Watson to put themselves in a position to be super successful.
Yeah, this doesn't come from Saban or Belichick or anybody, but there's a version of quarters that Robert Mays and Nate Tice used to call FU quarters, where it's like, we're not scared of you deep, but we're going to play, we're going to play our outside corners and press and, and play our safeties at 10 yards instead of 12. And basically we're going to come fly downhill and beat the crap out of you. The Saints played a ton of that, Matt, in the late 2010s, early 2020s, with Marshawn Lattimore and what they had with those guys. I think this is an opportunity for the Cowboys to show the difference schematically and structurally and how that's going to affect down to down. Because what this team has been for so long is it's been a feast or famine. You hear feast or famine offenses, right? Where it's like we're either hitting a big play or we're not getting anything, right? This was feast or famine defense, where either they were dominating the line of scrimmage, getting tons of sacks and all that kind of stuff, or they were getting turnovers and all that kind of stuff, or they were just getting, beat for 7, 8, 10, 12 yards at a time down the field. This is an opportunity and the thing that's kind of cool is that we saw some of this stuff show up in the preseason. The defense played pretty well in the preseason, I thought. But we didn't see any of that. We didn't see any of that crazy speed and range that the Cowboys have in the middle of their defense, with what Malik Hooker can bring, what Donovan Wilson can bring, what Overshown and Clark can bring. And we didn't see Eric Kendricks and him coordinating all that stuff in the middle. There's a lot that we still haven't seen that is going to be really cool and really interesting to see on the defensive side of the ball, how the Cowboys handle this Browns offense. That is it's going to be this cool mix of things. The Browns offense overall was just really bad last year. Their rushing success rate was 38.4%, so somewhere in the middle of the pack of the league. Their EPA per dropback was negative 0.131.
Jeez.
Per dropback. That is
not great, Bob.
Not great at all. So every time their offense was on the field, they got further from scoring points, and they went to the playoffs last year. So they're still without Nick Chubb. So we look at this team and we see a lot of talent top to bottom, but what it really comes down to is if the quarterback, if Deshaun Watson doesn't play at a level that gets them to acceptable offense, which what they had last year, even with Joe Flacco, was borderline acceptable level offense. If they don't get to that, it just becomes a matter of, can the Cowboys avoid the big major tragedy play on defense when they're on offense? As we pivot to, I think this is the real matchup of this game, where the Cowboys, they have two new starters on offense in Cooper Beebe and Tyler Guyton. But most of this offense, from a skill position standpoint, the quarterback, all that stuff is relatively established. We kind of know what to expect from this Cowboys offense. We think it's going to be pretty good. Other than, the Tyler Guyton, Myles Garrett matchup, which, everybody's going to talk about. And you can talk about it if you want to too. But what else are we looking at? What else are we watching as we go into this game, structurally, or just matchup, player versus player, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I'll touch on the Myles Garrett, Tyler Guyton matchup to begin, just because I did a little bit of work on that this morning, watching both of the players. And I think it's going to be really interesting, the matchup, because Guyton is one of the few offensive tackles who has the foot speed and range in his pass sets to really match Myles Garrett's speed up the edge and his ability to win to win with speed and bend. Guyton actually matches up pretty well against that. And it's just going to be a matter of Tyler Guyton not getting caught in those situations where he's leaning, where his hands get wide, because in those situations, that's where Myles Garrett will really take advantage and win inside moves, and he convert to power. People think, because Myles Garrett has the speed and the bend and he wins so much on the high side when he's rushing the passer, but the dude is 260 plus pounds. So when he converts speed to power, it's still an incredibly difficult thing to incredibly difficult thing to stymie for a opposing offensive lineman. And I think that's where Guyton might have his most trouble against Garrett. It's going to be one of those situations where I hope the Cowboys are going to be sending him a lot of help, so that makes things kind of easier on him, so that he can kind of anticipate the power, because they're going to have a chip, whether it be a tight end or a running back on the outside, so we can kind of be a little bit firmer in his pass sets. But the thing that you're going to want to see is you do not want to see his head come further out than his toes or his knees when he's looking to make contact with Myles Garrett, because if he does that consistently, Garrett is going to take advantage and have one of those days that we're hoping he's not, where he's generating 5, 6, 7 pressures. He's winning. He has a pass rush win rate of like 25 to 30% with a sack or two, and maybe even forcing a fumble. Like, he's a guy, he can wreck a game for an opposing offense, no matter how talented the opposing offense is. If you can't block Myles Garrett, it's going to make life incredibly difficult, especially when you add in the fact that the Browns have one of the most talented secondaries in the NFL. Like we said, their second level with Hicks and Jock is very impressive. Their interior defensive line isn't one of the best, but it's still talented. It's still above average, I would say. So when Myles Garrett is getting off, it makes the Cleveland defense almost impossible to, I guess they're doing the stopping, almost impossible to move the ball on consistently. So I think that matchup is going to hold a lot of importance. But I wouldn't be surprised you see Myles Garrett go against Terrence Steele, because Terrence Steele has a lot of those same issues when he's bad in pass protection. He gets his head over his toes, his hands get wide. He kind of looks to grasp and claw there, and he's just not quite as quick as Tyler Guyton in pass protection. So I wouldn't be surprised if you saw the Browns move Myles Garrett over to that side. But one guy who I'm going to be very, very, very interested in the Cleveland Browns pass rush to see how they're going to use him is Zadarius Smith. Throughout his career, he's been used as a spinner. He's someone who kind of matches up whoever is the weak link on opposing offensive lines. And even though he's a little bit older and he's not as quick as he used to be, he's still one of the most efficient pass rushers in the NFL. It's because he gets so many advantageous matchups. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw the Browns look to match him up one-on-one with Cooper Beebe, quite consistently on like third down, long situations where he can really get into his bag in one-on-one situations. So I'm going to be very intrigued to see what kind of chess pieces, how Jim Schwartz uses Zadarius Smith as a chess piece, and if he looks to see him take advantage, or look to see if he can take advantage of the rookie Cooper Beebe. I think those are going to be kind of the two biggest matchups for the Cowboys, especially in pass protection. And both of them have the ability to, I think, really hurt what the Cowboys are trying to do offensively if they have big games. Outside of that, I think the secondary versus the Cowboys receivers is going to be a very exciting matchup. CeeDee Lamb going up against the likes of Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome. Who's the other corner? Martin Emerson. I think it's going to be exciting, especially when you get Denzel Ward against CeeDee Lamb. That's going to be exciting, and Greg Newsome, because Newsome is one of the more underrated slot corners in the NFL, and we know CeeDee Lamb makes his hay in the slot. But when it comes down to it, when you put CeeDee in the slot, I honestly don't think there's a single cornerback alive who can cover CeeDee Lamb in the slot one-on-one. I think we saw it against the Dolphins last year with Jalen Ramsey. He couldn't stay with CeeDee Lamb one-on-one in the slot, and we've seen him take advantage of many top cornerbacks in the slot. When you give CeeDee Lamb a two-way go with how creative of a route runner he is and how he does a great job selling certain breaks, selling certain stems before breaking the other way and doing those type of things that create separation. The only thing I think that can hurt him there is the fact that he hasn't, maybe he's not in quite football shape yet. But I think receiver is one of those positions where you can get as close to football shape as you can get, because you're not getting the volume of hits that you're getting at these other positions where that takes a lot out of your gas tank. So I think he's going to be pretty ready, but I am very excited to see how those match up. And then Jalen Tolbert, is he going to be able to find and create separation against these guys when he's going up against a Denzel Ward or a Mark Emerson on the outside while CD Lamb is in the slot? Is he going to be able to create separation and get targets and earn targets and win targets against these one-on-one coverages? Because when he's on the outside, he's not going to be getting doubled. They're not going to be shading a safety his way. He's going to be getting that kind of pristine one-on-one matchup the receivers hope for, and it's just, can he take advantage? And honestly, I'm not 100% positive he can. I'm not sure that he's at that point of his career where he can get open against a guy like Denzel Ward. But if he does, then that's when you can see the Cowboys offense really open up against this really good defense and really have a successful day.
Yeah, I will say one thing schematically is that in a pretty similar way to what the Cowboys were just coming out of with Dan Quinn and what they had before in the Rod Marinelli world, is Jim Schwartz is going to kind of be what Jim Schwartz has been and has always probably will be. He may do some creative things up front to get guys matchups like you were talking about with Zadarius Smith and what he's going to do with Myles Garrett and all that kind of stuff. But they played like 66% middle of the field closed last year, I think is what I saw. I had to close the window, but it was like 60-something percent middle of the field closed, and they played man like the 5th highest rate in the league. Like, this is a relatively predictable cover 1, cover 3. The main changeup will be some cover 2, and they're going to play man, and they're going to say our talent is better than your talent, and we're going to and your quarterback isn't good enough to take advantage of that.
And before you continue, another thing that Schwartz defenses are known for, especially up front, is they use those really wide 9 edge rushers to create those really tough angles on those offensive tackles. And for an offensive tackle, it's not, you think because they're playing wide, it's to win high side, to win outside. But in reality, it's to create those inside counter opportunities because there's going to be such a giant gap between the tackle and the guard. So I think that's something that is going to be interesting, especially first week of the season, Guyton and Terrence Steele, how they're going to combat, going against rushers with those wide 9 alignments. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, no, you're good. And the wide 9 is a really interesting thing because it's caused so many people so much trouble for so long. But when you talk to, when you listen to Duke Manyweather talk, he's not scared of a wide 9. Like, they know, and this is important for the Cowboys because we've had the conversation about the Cowboys' relationship with the guy in the backyard there with Duke, is that these guys should, in theory, be comfortable handling wide 9 alignments at this point. Now, these guys are really good. So the thing about the wide 9 is, like you said, it gives them the opportunity to come inside, and it just changes the angle a little bit for that high side rush. And it also makes it so that inside rush is less drastic of a change of direction. If you're in like a 7 technique or, a 5, wide 5 or something like that, and you're right off the tackle's shoulder and you come off that edge, if you want to come back inside on him, you've got to make like a really strong change of direction. If you get wide, now the variance in your path to go high side or low side, as you would say, inside or outside, it's not that big. It's it's a step change of direction as opposed to like a big massive like Euro step style skip with some sort of hand move involved too. And it just can a lot of times put tackles in a passive state of pass protection where the defensive lineman has like a running head start at him.
Yeah, generate momentum.
Exactly, big momentum, big power, and because they are so wide, it does shorten that angle on the outside, on the high side. And so tackles have to be aware of that, and it winds up creating that outside stuff. But again, the Cowboys should know how to handle wide 9 stuff and should, in theory, be ready to protect against it. Schematically, Mike McCarthy's been around forever. Mike Solari's been around forever. These guys have answered these wide 9 questions before. They will be able to handle that stuff schematically. Now, whether Tyler Guyton can block Myles Garrett coming off a wide 9, we will see. Whether Terrence Steele can handle Myles Garrett coming out of a wide nine, we will see. But from a schematic standpoint, they should know how to handle it. Then it comes down to the guy doing their job. On the back end, one of the things about Jim Schwartz defenses, and I think this will hold up if we go look at their game logs from last year, is that when they played against good offenses, and now part of the reason teams wound up being good offenses is because they played well against Cleveland. So it's always one of those like, did they, when they played against, they played against Indianapolis and gave up 38 points. And I think that was right around the time whenever Richardson got hurt. They played against the Ravens and gave up 31 points. They gave up 36 points to the Rams. They gave up 27 to Jacksonville. They gave up 31 to Cincinnati after Joe Burrow got hurt. So this team, they gave up 28 to Baltimore in their first game and lost 28-3. Like, this is a really good defense that gained a lot of praise and put up a lot of really huge numbers against really bad teams. This is the team that gave up 94 total yards to the Tennessee Titans last year. The Dallas Cowboys in 2024 are not the 2023 Tennessee Titans.
I hope so.
Or even the 2023 Cincinnati Bengals with Joe Burrow hurt in the first week of the year when they had 142 total yards of offense. Or the Arizona Cardinals that had 58 total yards of offense. Like, those are the performances that the Browns had last year that made them feel so historic. But they gave up 330 total yards to the Bengals. They gave up 360 total yards of offense to the Jets in Week 17. They gave up 400 to the Colts. So this is a good defense. I don't want to sit here and say this is not a good defense. They are. But they are not the impenetrable force.
Yeah, I agree. They have weaknesses that you can exploit. They're one of those defenses, like I said, when they can get pressure on you, they can get on top of you early. It's going to be exceedingly difficult to move the ball or find any consistent success. But if you're able to stay ahead of the chains, so to say, and stay in, short to medium distance, it's going to be the Cowboys can have a lot of success. You can see the Cowboys put up 20, 30 points on this defense if they do those things. It's just the key is they cannot let those pass rushers up front ruin their day, because if they do let them ruin their day is going to get ruined 100%. But if the protection is solid up front, I think the Cowboys are going to find a lot of success. And I think the Cowboys can even run on the Browns if they are in those situations. Now, I don't think that you want to see them running it consistently to set up the pass or something like that, or go back to an offense that we saw the first 6 weeks of the season last year. But if they kind of do what they did toward the end of last season and what all indications are they are going to continue building off for this year, where they're kind of using the pass to set up the run, I think the Cowboys can have a lot of success if they execute and do the things that they need to do there. But I think they have the personnel to match up well with the Browns defense. I think they have the scheme that can put points on the board against the Browns defense. It's just a matter of can you stop that defensive player of the year on the edge? Not many people can. That dude's phenomenal. It's going to be a tough task, but if they can do that, you're going to see the Cowboys have a lot of success. I think what's interesting in this game is, from the Cowboys' point of view, I think there is a route where the Cowboys can win, like a big, 10 plus, 15 plus point win. But I don't think the Browns really have that avenue to win in that way. I think if the Browns are going to win, it's going to be closer within 7 points. And if the Cowboys are going to win, they have the ability to win close or win big. So I think the Cowboys are just the team that has a greater breadth of chances to win, whereas the Browns kind of have like a more narrow ability to win.
Yeah, I think the only way the Browns win big is if there's really fluky turnover luck in the game.
Yeah.
And the Cowboys turn the ball over 2 or 3 times and the Browns don't. then that's the way the Browns can win big. But I think the key for the Cowboys offensively is to have a forward posture, like to have a forward-leaning, aggressive posture. Because it's kind of similar to San Francisco in this way, just because of the way that they play, like just how hair on fire they play, and how they have a few players on that defense that are just so good that if you let this defense get rolling against you, it can create a lot of problems for your offense. And so if the Cowboys come out, we've talked about Dak and Hank and the hitches and all that kind of stuff early in the game. If they come out and the first third down of the game is 3rd and 6, and they come out and run Hank, and those outside corners sit on that crap, and there's nothing there, then we might be in for a long day. But if the Cowboys come out and are moving the ball, I think the early, this is big picture. This is the way you should play offense. But against a team like this, especially early down passing, where you can control the personnel that they have on the field. Because if you could take them and take a secondary player off the field and force a linebacker on the field because you've got Hunter Lipke on the field or you've got Luke Schoonmaker on the field in 12 or 21 personnel, I think that gives you an advantage in this game versus when you put Jalen Tolbert on the field and you wind up with Newsome on the inside and Emerson on the outside and all that kind of stuff. I think the Cowboys' advantage here is going to come in big personnel, and I think it's going to come in early down passes, use some play action, get JOK that loves to fly all over the place, get him moving side to side, and then hit the ball behind them in front of those really great safeties and give guys like that.
Yeah, and that's the thing about Cleveland is I think they're a very aggressive defense. So I think there's a team that's very susceptible to misdirection, to play action. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Turpin have a couple big plays off like jet sweeps or wide receiver screens, like RPOs, smoke screens, those type of things. I really think that the Cowboys, and that's something that we saw the Cowboys do last year. Like I said, I really think from a schematic point of view, they have the ability to take advantage of this, everything they need to take advantage of a defense that's this aggressive and this talented. It's just a matter of, like you've said, like I've been saying, you got to have that forward posture. You can't be in situations where you're 2nd and 10, 2nd and 13, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10. Those, long down and distances on 2nd and 3rd down. That's going to make life extremely tough. It's going to make life extremely tough. But if they're playing in front of the sticks, they're using misdirection, they're using play action where, they're in those 2nd and medium situations where the linebackers have to fly up to defend their run fits, and that creates the voids behind them. I mean, if you can isolate Jake Ferguson against Deion Bush in coverage, that's going to be something that I think is going to play to the Cowboys' favor a lot. So like I said, I think that this is a game, even though the Cleveland Browns are talented, I think it is sitting in the Cowboys kind of side of the court. I think that they should be favored, and I think they are the better team. I think that they're the team that should come out with the victory. But like we all know, football is a crazy game and things change very quickly. But as we look at things now, look at things we saw in the preseason, look at all the schematic changes we saw on the defensive side of the ball from the Cowboys through OTAs and training camp in the preseason, I think that they match up really well here.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think I give Mike Zimmer a little bit of an advantage on the Ken Dorsey. Now blanking on the head coach's name because that's I'm thinking about offensive coordinator.
Stefanski, right?
Stefanski, yeah. But the Dorsey Stefanski combination, I think I give Zimmer an advantage there. Those are really good offensive coaches, but Mike Zimmer, an incredible defensive coordinator. And then I think I give Mike Zimmer, Jim Schwartz from a schematic standpoint is probably relatively even in terms of like the level of coach that they are. But the thing about Mike McCarthy is that Mike McCarthy has seen this Jim Schwartz type of defense. This is one of the advantages of having an old guy offensive coordinator is that he's seen the defensive systems that Jim Schwartz is going to bring, and it's going to be a positive posture for the Cowboys, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be, I think it's going to be an exciting matchup. There's so many good matchups, not only in the coaching staffs on the field. I think there's so many different little storylines playing out that when we come back Tuesday for our film review, it's going to be really exciting to really get into the nitty gritty details of who won each individual matchup, how they won, what different schemes were being used, that kind of chess game that they were playing between Zimmer and Dorsey and McCarthy and Schwartz. I think it's something that could be very intriguing and something, and all of those things are going to play a big part in who's going to win. So I'm very excited. I just can't wait for Sunday to get here.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Side part of this conversation that we haven't talked about yet is that this is going to be Tom Brady's broadcast
Oh
debut
yeah,
on Fox. I'm pretty sad that
and he can't show up to the practices before.
I know it's like such a weird situation that Fox has got to be kind of not thrilled with this whole situation that they can't send their number one color guy to production meetings to talk to the players or to practices to watch. Like, it's a very weird situation. But how do you feel about Tom Brady, the announcer? I'm going to miss Greg Olson. I thought Greg Olson was awesome.
Oh yeah.
But I'm going to miss him. But what do you think about Tom Brady, the broadcaster?
The thing about Greg Olson is I don't think there's any other commentator who really talks about and discusses the technique of positions in detail as well as Greg Olson. Like the way he talks about route running is some of the best little nuggets that you'll see. Like it's like honestly, like you're going to a coaching clinic when he's talking about, that little he just had a clip come out where he was talking about how he creates separation on out routes, against guys who are playing kind of a squat technique. And it was just phenomenal. I loved Greg Olson. Old G Reg is fantastic. But Tom Brady, I think he's going to be good. And I also think he benefits from kind of the Romo situation. We know, well, I don't know if everybody knows, but there's been a lot of consternation behind the scenes the last couple of years because Romo doesn't really put in the work that a lot of other commentators do. And the reason why he was so successful right away after his career is because he had that playing experience in the front of his brain. He was just studying these teams. He was just, playing against these teams. So he knew their strengths and weaknesses inside and out so much that he didn't have to do the outside study to really put together a fantastic games. And he was so good those first two seasons. I think he was honestly one of the two or three best commentators that I've seen those first two seasons, and he's kind of fallen off a lot recently. And I think Brady's going to kind of benefit from that, even though he can't go and like watch practice or interview coaches players prior to a game. I think especially for this first season, I think it's not going to be that big of a deal because he already has so much like personal experiences going up against these types of defenses, going against these players. So I don't think it's going to affect them that much. And I think he's going to be good. I am a little bit interested to see kind of his boomer takes. We've seen some of his boomer takes where he's talking about how
the numbers and
football and how like they're not tough and like we're just not playing good football and we're not doing this, not doing that, blah blah blah. So I'm wondering how much of that consternation is going to kind of jump up. And Brady does have a little bit of the, well, I did it, I don't see how these guys can't do it, when they don't understand. They're like, bro, you're Tom Brady. So I'm wondering like what kind of level is he going to hold players to, and what's his barometer for like good and bad play going to be? I think it's going to be very intriguing. And honestly, the overall personality, I think Tony Romo, the thing that benefited him as well is that he kind of has more of like a boyish, fun personality. Like you can feel the excitement in the air when he's there. Whereas Brady, I don't know if he's going to bring that facet. And I'm wondering if he's going to kind of just be a little bit more monotone and not really ride the ebbs and the flows of the game that kind of make it so kind of make the audience at home feel like they're at the stadium and in that environment like Romo does really well. And I'm not sure Brady's going to be able to replicate that, but I'm interested. It's going to be exciting. Like you said, I wish we had old G-Reg doing it. That would have been my preferred commentator. But I think the Cowboys will get him plenty. They're on Fox a ton. And I think you're going to get obviously a lot of Tom Brady, but I think you're going to get a lot of G-Reg as well. So I think it'll be good regardless. I think Brady will be fine. I think it'll be good, but I'm not sure he's going to be like the fantastic, amazing, best commentator in the world that I feel like a lot of people are expecting him just to do walk into day one.
I think Fox might be expecting him to walk into that day one, and who knows? We haven't seen any of it, so he may be. But Jace, to answer your question, yes, there are limitations. Because he has a bid in to become a part owner of the Las Vegas Raiders. There are limitations to the access that he can have to other teams outside of the Raiders. And so he can't go into the other facilities. He can't go to practice. He can't go to production meetings. He can't do all that kind of stuff because that's a level of access that he's not allowed. And then there's also like some stuff in the agreements that you have to sign to be in, like, you're not supposed to criticize other organizations.
The refs, you can't.
Yeah, you're not supposed to criticize the officials. Like, there's all this stuff up in the air that we're going to see how this plays out in real time, and how much of it is like, oh, this will be a big deal whenever we get to the season and he's broadcasting games, and how much of it won't be. And maybe we get like real unfiltered Tom in week one, and then there's like some backlash behind the scenes for it. And then he either withdraws his Vegas ownership thing, or we see a different Tom Brady week 2 through 18 or whatever.
That's one of the things that'll turn fans against you quickly, is not criticizing the officials to the level that they believe. I mean, we've seen, I think Kirk Herbstreit is someone who has been hit with it many times throughout his career of not, criticizing bad calls as much as he should. And he's kind of like sugarcoating it for the refs. Like, oh, I can kind of see how they're going that way, when it's blatantly obvious that they were wrong and stuff like that. And we've seen how much consternation that has kind of created amongst the audience. So I'm wondering if that is going to rear its ugly head against Tom Brady as well. Because like you said, if he really is going to become the part owner of the Raiders, he's not allowed to criticize the refs. He's not allowed to say that they're doing a bad job and that these calls are poor. And we know throughout the season that's going to happen. These NFL referees, man, doing their part-time gigs, they're not up to par a lot. There's a lot of iffy calls and bad calls and like not just one-offs, like strings of bad calls. We see it against, we saw it last year with Micah Parsons and holding. I mean, the fact that the fastest edge rusher in the NFL didn't get a holding call for like 10 straight weeks is some of the most baffling BS that we've ever seen. But we'll see. If he's not going to be able to criticize referees, that's going to make his ability to do his job at the highest ability possible very, very difficult.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out for sure, because there's just a lot of questions there there's a lot of unknowns that I think if Fox knew that all this stuff was going to be flying around and there would be this much uncertainty about how he could do his job, I wonder if they would have dove so headfirst into this idea. Although you kind of have to dive headfirst in, or you're just not going to get Tom. Like, that's kind of the deal. But I do agree with you on the Romo stuff, where Romo had this like innate advantage versus all of the other broadcasters. It's like he's broadcasting on the same network at the same time as like Dan Fouts, who played in like 1978 or something like that. And there's just no comparison in terms of how prepared one of those guys is for what he's seeing on the field in 2020 or 2018 versus the other. So that's kind of where I am on the Tom Brady thing too. We're getting close to the hour mark, John. I think we've got to do it. I think we've got to make a prediction. We got to plant our flags into the ground and make a prediction for the game. What do you got? Who wins? How much? All that kind of stuff.
Okay, I'm gonna go Cowboys victory. We'll say 27 to 20. Cowboys 27-20. I think Dak Prescott's going to have a good day. I think, actually, interestingly enough, you're going to see Rico Dowdle have a good day out of the backfield for the Cowboys, and he's going to establish himself as the kind of volume number one primary runner. I still think Zeke's going to be the guy in short down and distances and red zone, but I think Rico Dowdle is going to kind of push himself above the rest of the crew in terms of the running back room. And on defense, I think we're going to see. I think Eric Kendricks is going to have a really big day. I think he's going to show to the Cowboys fans that we do have like a better Mike linebacker than we've had, and his ability to process quickly is going to be something that's going to blow Cowboys fans' minds, I think, early on in the season. And obviously, I think my boys, DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons, are going to eat. They're going to eat on the edge. I think you're going to get a sack from Micah and no sacks from D-Law, but we're going to get 3 run stops and 2 tackles for loss for him while just applying pressure, maybe getting like half dozen pressures or something like that.
There you go.
No, I'm excited. Cowboys 27, 20.
There you go. So for the sake of the folks who like to gamble, the line right now is Cowboys plus 2.5. So the Browns are favored by 2.5 points. Vegas typically, I believe, gives the home team 3 points. So that means that on a neutral field, the Cowboys will be favored by 0.5 point. I'm going to go Cowboys 24, Browns. I like 20. I like the number you said in 20, but I don't know. I'm not going to copy you. So I'm going to go Cowboys 24, Browns 17.
There we go.
That gets it done.
Like it. I like it.
We got it. There we are. All right. So I think we got it. John's at 27-20 Cowboys, and I am at 24-17 Cowboys. Cowboys start 1-0 according to John and I. We'll see how it goes. Tuesday's going to be fun. We're going to review the tape. We're going to dive deep. Like, you're not going to get this kind of dive pretty much anywhere else.
No way.
We got some fun technical stuff coming on it, and it's going to be exciting to get through it. So enjoy the game. Tolerate Tom Brady. Maybe enjoy Tom Brady. We'll see. And welcome back to the regular season. We only get to do this 17 times a year. Enjoy it. Spend time with your friends and family, and we will see you guys on Tuesday.